My daughter-in-law told me to know my place, but she regretted it when the door opened. I never thought my own son would watch silently as his wife destroyed me. The moment happened at dinner, in the house I built with these weathered hands, where my late wife's laughter once filled every corner. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, slammed her wine glass down hard enough to crack the silence. "Know your place in this house?" she hissed, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing toward me like a dagger. "You're just a guest now." The roast chicken I'd prepared turned to ash in my mouth. My son Marcus sat frozen, fork suspended midair, eyes locked on his plate like a coward. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, counting the seconds of my humiliation. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the oak table I'd carved 30 years ago. Every family photo on the walls seemed to mock me. Reminders of happier times when my Eleanor was alive, when respect still existed under this roof. Victoria's cold smile widened as she watched me struggle for words. Something inside my chest cracked, splintering like old wood under pressure. I swallowed my rage, feeling it burn down my throat, settling like poison in my stomach. That night, I made a silent promise to myself. After everyone retreated to their rooms, I knocked softly on Marcus's door. My boy, no, my 40-year-old son, opened it with obvious reluctance, his face already defensive. "Dad, what is it?" he asked, not inviting me inside. I kept my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Son, what happened tonight? That wasn't right. Your mother would be heartbroken." Marcus's jaw tightened, and he glanced back toward his bedroom where Victoria was probably listening. When he turned back to me, his eyes held something I'd never seen before. Cold indifference. "Dad, this is my wife's house now," he said flatly, each word a nail in my coffin. "Don't make things harder for everyone. Just adapt." The hallway suddenly felt suffocating. My own flesh and blood, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college tuition I'd worked double shifts to pay. This stranger stood before me now. "Adapt," I whispered. He stepped back and closed the door quietly, leaving me standing alone in the dim hallway. That night, lying in my small bedroom, I vowed silently, I wouldn't be dismissed so easily. Morning light revealed the true extent of Victoria's conquest. I found her in Eleanor's sewing room, our sanctuary, surrounded by cardboard boxes. My wife's belongings, carefully preserved for 3 years since her passing, were being stuffed away like garbage. The vintage Singer sewing machine her grandmother gave her, the quilts she'd stitched through countless winters, her collection of porcelain thimbles from our travels. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked. Victoria didn't even look up. "Spring cleaning. These are just clutter taking up valuable space. I'm converting this into a home office." She held up Eleanor's wedding dress. The ivory lace yellowed with age but still beautiful. My heart stopped. "That's not clutter. That's my wife." Victoria shrugged, folding it carelessly. "Was your wife." Past tense. Time to move forward. I crossed the room and gently took the dress from her hands, feeling the delicate fabric that Eleanor wore 42 years ago. My fingers traced the pearl buttons she'd sewn herself. "You'll see," I whispered, more to Eleanor's memory than to Victoria. "She won't erase us." Victoria's laugh was sharp and dismissive, but I caught something flickering in her eyes. Uncertainty. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to like this story and also hit the subscribe button to get notified of our new series. Mrs. Patterson from next door caught me on the porch that afternoon. The 70-something widow had lived beside us for decades, witnessed Eleanor's funeral, watched my family transform. "Thomas," she said quietly, glancing toward my house nervously, "I need to tell you something." We sat on her porch swing, the same one where Eleanor and she used to gossip over lemonade. "You're not the first, you know," Mrs. Patterson continued, wringing her weathered hands. "Victoria's own parents. She cut them completely out of her life 2 years before she married Marcus. Over some inheritance dispute. My blood ran cold. Her mother tried reaching out through me once. The woman was heartbroken. Said Victoria was always manipulative, always calculating. She touched my arm gently. This isn't about misunderstanding or adjustment, Thomas. This is a pattern. She isolates people, takes control, then discards anyone who doesn't serve her purpose. I watched a cardinal land on Eleanor's rose bush, the flowers she'd planted still blooming despite everything. The realization settled over me like winter frost. Victoria hadn't simply been rude. She'd been executing a plan. This was calculated removal, systematic erasure. The question was, what would she do next? The answer arrived 3 days later in an official-looking envelope from First National Bank. My hands shook as I opened it, scanning the dense financial jargon until certain words jumped out. Refinanced, new deed holders, Marcus Thompson and Victoria Thompson. My son had secretly refinanced the house, removing my name entirely from the mortgage. The property structure, the walls, the roof, the renovations I'd poured my sweat into, now legally belonged to them alone. I called the bank immediately. The representative confirmed my worst fears. Marcus had used power of attorney documents I'd signed years ago during a routine estate planning session. "Sir, you might want to consult a lawyer," she said sympathetically. "These situations can get complicated." Complicated. The word echoed hollowly as I sat in my small bedroom, surrounded by the few possessions Victoria hadn't yet boxed away. They'd been planning this, perhaps for months. Every kind gesture, every "Dad, you're getting older, let us help with the paperwork" conversation. It had all been strategic. My own son had betrayed me with legal documents and forged signatures. But they'd forgotten something. They'd forgotten who taught Marcus everything he knew. Victoria cornered me in the kitchen one evening, her smile predatory and confident. Marcus was working late or hiding, more likely. She poured herself wine, not offering me any, claiming the space like a conquering queen. "Thomas, we need to discuss your future," she began, her tone dripping false concern. "Marcus and I have been researching some lovely retirement communities, assisted living facilities with activities, medical care on site. Don't you think it's time?" The knife I was using to slice vegetables stilled. "I'm 63, Victoria. Healthy. Still working part-time." She waved dismissively. "But for how long? We need to plan ahead. Besides, this house is really too much for 3 adults. You'd be happier somewhere appropriate." Appropriate. Code for gone. I set down the knife carefully, turning to face her fully. Her expression was triumphant, certain of victory. She expected protests, tears, perhaps anger she could use against me. Instead, I smiled calmly. "You know what, Victoria? You're absolutely right." Her confidence faltered for just a second. "I should start looking at options. Thank you for your concern." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, confusion replacing smugness. She'd expected resistance. Compliance shocked her. Good. Let her wonder what I was planning. 2 weeks later, I packed my belongings into my old truck. Not everything, just essentials, clothes, a few photographs, Eleanor's wedding dress carefully wrapped in tissue paper. The house was quiet that Saturday morning. Marcus had conveniently scheduled a business trip. Victoria watched from the living room window, arms crossed, satisfaction radiating from her posture. I took one last walk through the rooms. The kitchen where Eleanor taught our kids to bake. The living room where we'd celebrated Christmases. The workshop in the basement where I'd built furniture, repaired toys, crafted a life. My hands traced the doorframe I'd installed myself, feeling the grain of wood I'd selected from the lumberyard 35 years ago. Every nail, every board, every careful measurement. I knew this house intimately because I'd created it. Victoria had the paperwork, but I had the knowledge. "Let's see how well you manage without me," I muttered, loading the final box. As I drove away, I didn't look back. Eleanor always said that sometimes you have to let people fall to teach them how to stand. My son was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The apartment I rented was modest, a one-bedroom in an older building across town. The rent was cheap, the neighbors quiet, the space sufficient. I didn't need much anymore. That first night, I unpacked slowly, placing Eleanor's photograph on the nightstand where I could see her smile. The loneliness was crushing, but also clarifying. I called an old friend, Bernard, from my construction days. We'd built half the commercial buildings in this town together before I'd shifted to smaller renovation projects. Tommy, where the hell have you been? Bernard's booming voice filled my small kitchen. We met at McGinty's pub, a working man's bar we'd frequented 30 years ago. Over beers and wings, I told him an edited version of my situation. Bernard listened, his weathered face growing darker. Family can cut deeper than enemies, he said finally. Listen, I've got a renovation project starting next week. Strip mall conversion. Could use an experienced hand if you're interested. I accepted immediately. As we talked logistics, I pulled out a small notebook and began sketching. Bernard noticed. What's that? I smiled. Just an idea I'm working on. The idea was revenge, methodical, legal, and absolutely devastating. Among the boxes I'd rescued from Victoria's purge were documents Eleanor had meticulously organized. Financial records, property papers, insurance policies. My wife had been nothing if not thorough. Late one night, unable to sleep, I reviewed everything by lamplight. That's when I found it. The original land deed from 1985. My name alone, Thomas William Thompson, printed clearly as sole owner of lot 247. Comprising 0.8 acres. The house Marcus had refinanced sat on that land, but the land itself remained untouched by their legal maneuvering. My heart raced as I examined subsequent documents. They'd refinanced the structure, yes, but property law was clear. Improvements to land belonged to the landowner. My son now held a mortgage on a building sitting on property he didn't own. Without my permission, explicit, legal, notarized permission, that house was built on my foundation, literally and figuratively. I spent the next week consulting with a real estate attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Hayes who'd handled Eleanor's estate. Thomas, she said, spreading the documents across her desk. This is solid. You have leverage here. Significant leverage. For the first time in months, I felt something besides grief and humiliation. I felt powerful. If you're hooked on this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more compelling tales like this one. I started attending family gatherings again. Baptisms, birthday parties, Sunday dinners at my sister's house. Victoria and Marcus would stiffen when I arrived, but I was always pleasant, always appropriate. During casual conversations, I'd drop carefully constructed comments. Interesting how property law works these days. I'd mention to my brother-in-law over coffee. Did you know refinancing a structure doesn't automatically convey land rights? To my niece studying law, fascinating case study. What happens when someone builds on land they don't technically own? The seeds planted slowly. Relatives started asking questions, searching online, whispering. Marcus's younger brother pulled me aside once. Dad mentioned something about your property situation. Everything okay? I smiled enigmatically. Just reviewing options, making sure all my affairs are properly in order. The rumor mill churned. Victoria noticed the shift. Conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, sidelong glances, cooler greetings. Her carefully constructed image as the dutiful daughter-in-law was cracking. Marcus grew increasingly tense, snapping at family members, defending decisions no one had openly questioned. The tension built like humidity before a thunderstorm. I simply waited, patient as stone, for the perfect moment to strike. Through mutual friends, I heard about Marcus's struggles. The new mortgage payment was substantially higher than expected. Variable interest rates, balloon payments, fees Victoria hadn't understood when she'd pushed Marcus to refinance quickly. Their credit cards were maxing out. Victoria's expensive tastes, designer clothes, luxury spa days, elaborate renovations, weren't adjusting to their new financial reality. One afternoon, Marcus appeared at my apartment unannounced. He looked exhausted, 20 pounds thinner, eyes shadowed. Dad, can we talk? Over coffee, he danced around the real issues, asking vague questions about property taxes and maintenance costs I used to handle. I answered honestly but offered no solutions. As he left, I heard him on the phone in the hallway. Victoria, I can't just cut him out completely, he said, voice strained. He's still my dad, for Christ's sake. Her response was shrill even through the phone. Then you're choosing him over me. The apartment door slammed. I stood at my window, watching my son sit in his car for 10 minutes before driving away, and recognized that posture. Defeated, trapped, desperate. The same way I'd felt at that dinner table months ago. The difference was I'd found my way out. Marcus was still lost in Victoria's maze. I sent a formal invitation via text. Need to discuss property matters. Please come to my apartment Saturday at 2 p.m. Both of you. Marcus called immediately, concerned. What's this about, Dad? I kept my voice neutral. Just paperwork that needs addressing. Won't take long. They arrived on time. Victoria dressed immaculately as always, her expression mixing curiosity with contempt. She scanned my modest apartment with obvious disdain. Cozy, she said, the word dripping sarcasm. Marcus looked uncomfortable, perching on the edge of my second-hand couch. I offered coffee, which they refused. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, charged with unspoken tension. I retrieved a folder from my desk drawer, placing it carefully on the coffee table between us. The manila folder seemed innocuous, but Victoria's eyes narrowed. What's that? I sat across from them, hands folded calmly. The reason we're here. Marcus reached for the folder, but I stopped him with a gesture. Before we begin, I want you both to understand something. What happens next is entirely your choice. Victoria's laugh was sharp. Are you threatening us? I smiled. Just clarifying our situation. I opened the folder, revealing the land deed inside. The silence that followed was absolute. I let them read. Watched comprehension dawn on Marcus's face, horror replacing confusion. Victoria snatched the document, scanning frantically, her perfect composure crumbling. This house you've been living in, I began calmly, sits entirely on my land. The property at 847 Maple Drive, every square inch of it belongs to me. Check the lot number, the boundaries, the date. Marcus was pale. But the refinancing covered the structure only. The building itself. But that building stands on my property. Every brick, every foundation pillar, every support beam rests on land titled in my name alone. I produced additional documents, surveys, tax records, the original purchase agreement from 1985. In property law, improvements to land typically benefit the landowner. You've actually been paying to renovate my property. Victoria's face had drained of color, her knuckles white as she gripped the papers. You knew about this, she whispered. You've known all along. I met her eyes steadily. I built that house, Victoria. With my hands, my sweat, my money. Did you really think I wouldn't know every legal detail of what I'd created? Marcus found his voice. Dad, what are you saying? I leaned back, perfectly calm. That we need to discuss the future of this arrangement. I laid out the options methodically, like the contractor I'd been for 40 years. Option 1. You purchase the land from me. Current market value for 0.8 acres in this neighborhood is approximately $180,000. We conduct a fair sale, transfer the deed, and you truly own what you've claimed. Victoria made a strangled sound. They couldn't afford that, not with their current debt. Option 2. We negotiate a formal lease agreement. You pay me monthly rent for land usage, retroactive to when you refinanced without my permission, plus going forward. Marcus was calculating frantically, realizing the numbers would crush them. Option 3. You vacate the property within 90 days, and I decide what to do with my land and the structure on it. The silence was deafening. Victoria finally erupted. You wouldn't dare. That's Marcus's home. You'd make your own son homeless. I didn't raise my voice. You made me a guest in the house I built, Victoria. You told me to know my place. Now I'm simply clarifying what everyone's place actually is, legally speaking. She shot to her feet. This is extortion. I stood as well, meeting her fury with ice. This is property law. Consult your own attorney if you doubt me. She grabbed her purse, storming toward the door, then spinning back. You're a bitter old man trying to punish us. I smiled sadly. No, Victoria. I'm just a man who finally remembered his worth. The lawyer's letter arrived at their home Tuesday morning. Patricia Hayes had crafted it perfectly, professional, legally airtight, coldly formal. It outlined the property situation, cited relevant statutes, and established a 45-day timeline for response. Marcus called me 6 times that day. I didn't answer. Victoria left voicemails, her tone cycling from threats to pleading to rage and back. "You're destroying your relationship with your son," she screamed in one message. By evening, they appeared at my apartment again, unannounced. I almost didn't let them in, but Marcus looked broken, so I relented. "Dad, please," he began. "We can work this out." Victoria stayed silent this time, her earlier bravado shattered by legal reality. "There's nothing to work out," I replied. "The letter explains everything. Choose your option and respond through your attorney." Marcus's composure finally cracked. "I can't afford any of those options. The mortgage is killing us. Victoria's spending." He stopped abruptly, glancing at his wife. The cracks between them had become chasms. I felt a pang of sympathy for my son, trapped by his own weak choices and his wife's manipulation. But sympathy wouldn't restore my dignity. "Then you should have thought about that before refinancing my house behind my back," I said quietly. "Before letting your wife treat me like garbage in my own home." The truth hung between us, unavoidable and sharp as broken glass. Word spread through our small community like wildfire. Mrs. Patterson, bless her gossiping heart, ensured everyone knew the truth. The devoted daughter-in-law had actually tried to steal her father-in-law's property. Church became uncomfortable for Victoria. Women who'd admired her stylish clothes now whispered behind their bulletins. Men who'd respected Marcus's business acumen questioned his judgment. My sister hosted a family dinner and pointedly seated me at the head of the table, a position Victoria had claimed for months. When Victoria arrived, the room's temperature dropped noticeably. Conversations became stilted. No one asked about her renovations anymore. At church the following Sunday, the social hour was telling. Usually, Victoria worked the room, collecting compliments and admiration. This time, she stood alone by the coffee station while clusters of parishioners carefully avoided her. Reverend Phillips approached me instead, squeezing my shoulder. "Thomas, we've all been praying for you." The community's support was overwhelming and, I suspected, devastating to Victoria's carefully constructed image. Marcus noticed. I saw him watching as former friends turned away, as invitations dried up, as their social standing crumbled. The isolation Victoria had inflicted on me was now circling back to consume her. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, show your support by liking and subscribing for more stories. The knock came at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. I almost ignored it, but something made me check the peephole. Marcus stood alone in the hallway, looking smaller somehow, diminished. I opened the door. "Son." He stepped inside without asking, pacing my small living room. "I need to talk. Victoria doesn't know I'm here." We sat in silence for a moment before words burst from him like a dam breaking. "I've been such a fool, Dad. I see it now. The way she isolated you, pushed you out. Is what she does, to everyone. Her parents tried to warn me before the wedding." His voice cracked. "I thought I was being loyal to my wife, but I was just being weak. I should have defended you." I wanted to comfort him, to absolve him, but that wouldn't help either of us. "Recognizing it is a start," I said carefully. Marcus looked up, eyes red. "I want to make this right. Tell me how." I shook my head slowly. "That's not how this works. You can't undo what's been done with apologies." He flinched. "Then what? You just destroy us financially?" I met his gaze steadily. "No, son. You did that yourselves. I'm just protecting what's mine." As he left, defeated, I called after him. "Regret won't pay for respect, Marcus." The truth was harsh but necessary. The call came Sunday afternoon from a number I hadn't seen in 5 years. "Dad." My daughter Veronica's voice was cautious, uncertain. We'd been estranged since Eleanor's funeral, old wounds about her marriage, about choices I'd criticized. Veronica. I breathed her name like a prayer. I heard what's happening with Marcus and that woman he married, she said bluntly. Veronica had never liked Victoria, called her calculating from their first meeting. I'm coming home. She arrived 3 days later, her husband and 2 kids in tow. My grandchildren, ages 7 and 5, whom I'd barely seen. Veronica hugged me tight at my apartment door. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry we lost so much time. Having my daughter back felt like light entering a dark room. She attended the next family dinner with me, and her presence shifted everything. Veronica was formidable, a corporate lawyer who didn't tolerate nonsense. When Victoria tried her usual manipulations, Veronica shut her down with icy precision. Funny how you talk about family loyalty while trying to steal from yours, Veronica said sweetly, cutting through Victoria's victim narrative. Marcus watched his sister with something like relief. The battle lines had shifted. I was no longer alone in this fight, and Victoria finally looked genuinely frightened. Victoria's counterattack was predictable. At a large family barbecue my brother hosted, she began planting seeds of doubt about my mental state. Thomas has been so confused lately, she told anyone who'd listen, her voice dripping false concern. Mixing up dates, forgetting conversations. Marcus and I are worried about early dementia. She even produced a doctor's business card. We've been researching geriatric specialists. My niece approached me hesitantly afterward. Uncle Thomas, Victoria said you've been having memory problems? I smiled calmly. Did she? I prepared for this. From my jacket pocket, I produced a folder I'd been carrying, dated, notarized documents, including a cognitive assessment I'd voluntarily taken 2 weeks prior. Perfect scores. Patricia Hayes had suggested it as insurance. This is from my physical last month, I explained, letting her read. Clean bill of health, including cognitive function. The lie spread among the family like oil on water, but so did the truth. By evening's end, Victoria stood exposed. My brother confronted Marcus directly. Your wife just accused Dad of being senile. That's not miscommunication. That's slander. Marcus couldn't defend her. Watching Victoria's schemes crumble was satisfying, but also sad. This was the woman my son had chosen, had defended. What did that say about the man I'd raised? The financial collapse happened faster than I'd anticipated. Victoria's spending habits, unchecked for years, finally caught up catastrophically. Marcus's company downsized, cutting his salary by 30%. The mortgage, the credit cards, the car payments, everything came due simultaneously. Creditors started calling at all hours. I heard about it through Mrs. Patterson, who heard Victoria screaming at Marcus through their open windows. This is your fault. You should have handled your father better. Furniture appeared on their lawn being repossessed. The luxury SUV Victoria drove vanished overnight, replaced by a 10-year-old sedan. Her designer clothes started appearing at consignment shops downtown. I ran into Marcus at the grocery store one evening. His cart contained generic brands, marked down produce. He looked hollowed out, ashamed. Dad, he started, but I just nodded and moved past. I wasn't ready yet. Later, through the wall of my apartment, I heard my neighbor talking on the phone. She was Marcus's coworker's wife. You should have heard him today, she said. He asked out loud, what did I marry? Like he finally sees her clearly. The question hung in my mind too. Marcus was learning what I'd known for months, that Victoria loved only herself and whatever served her ambitions. Everything else was disposable. The storm hit on a Tuesday night, rain lashing my apartment windows, thunder rattling the glass. I was reading, Eleanor's photograph smiling at me from the end table, when someone knocked urgently. Through the peephole I saw Marcus standing in the downpour, no umbrella, soaking wet. A suitcase sat at his feet. I opened the door. Dad, he said, voice breaking. I can't do this anymore. I let him in, got him towels, made coffee while he changed into dry clothes from his suitcase. We sat at my small kitchen table, the same way we used to when he was a teenager with problems. She emptied our joint account, Marcus said finally. Everything we had left. Transferred it to an account I didn't know about. When I confronted her, she said I was a failure, that she deserved security since I couldn't provide it. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. You tried to warn me, didn't you? Years ago when we first got serious. You said something about her seeming too focused on outcomes rather than people. I had said that. Eleanor and I had both sensed something off, but Marcus had accused us of being judgmental. What are you going to do? I asked quietly. He stared into his coffee mug. I don't know. I just knew I couldn't stay there another night. Can I? Could I possibly stay here for a few days? I nodded slowly. The couch is yours. Victoria appeared 3 days later. I'd been expecting her. The doorbell rang Saturday morning, insistent and demanding. Through the peephole, I saw her, looking nothing like the polished woman who'd sneered at my humble apartment months ago. Her hair was unwashed, makeup smeared, designer clothes wrinkled. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Thomas, please, she began, her voice cracking. I made mistakes. I see that now. But you're tearing my marriage apart. Her eyes were desperate, calculating even in crisis, wondering which angle might work. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was wrong to say those things, to box up Eleanor's belongings. I was insecure, scared Marcus would always put you first. The performance was almost convincing. Almost. Behind me, I heard Marcus emerge from the bathroom, stopping when he saw his wife. Don't, Marcus said quietly to her. Don't manipulate him too. Victoria's mask cracked. I need that house, Thomas. I've put everything into it. If you evict us, I'll have nothing. I thought about Eleanor, about the years of building and sacrifice, about the disrespect and humiliation. I thought about second chances and whether everyone deserved them. Then I simply shut the door. Her protests faded as I locked the deadbolt. Marcus stood in the hallway watching me. Thank you, he whispered. The road to reconciliation wasn't simple or immediate. Marcus stayed on my couch for 2 weeks while filing for separation. We really talked, for the first time in years. He told me how Victoria had slowly isolated him, how she'd weaponized his guilt about Eleanor's death, how she'd convinced him that loyalty to her meant distance from me. I thought being a husband meant choosing her over everything, Marcus admitted one night. But I just became weak. I told him about the loneliness after Eleanor died, how Victoria's treatment had felt like losing another family member, how close I'd come to giving up entirely. But then I remembered what your mother always said. Dignity isn't given, it's claimed. Finally, Marcus asked what I needed from him. Make this right, I said simply. Legally, permanently. I want my name restored on that property deed. And I want a written acknowledgement of what happened. Not for revenge, but for truth. Patricia Hayes drew up the documents. Marcus signed everything without hesitation, returning my sole ownership of the land, acknowledging the refinancing had been done without my informed consent, agreeing to mediation for the structure's status. As his pen moved across the papers, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of it. This doesn't fix everything, I told him. But it's a start. Marcus nodded, understanding. I know, but I'll spend however long it takes earning back your trust. Outside, spring was arriving. Eleanor's roses would bloom soon. The eviction notice arrived at 8:47 Maple Drive on a Monday morning. Victoria had refused to vacate voluntarily, convinced until the last moment that Marcus would return, that I would relent. Sheriff's deputies supervised as she packed her belongings, reduced from her previous Queen of the Manor status to just another evicted tenant. I didn't attend. Marcus asked me not to, and I agreed. This wasn't about gloating. But Mrs. Patterson called with updates. The whole street's watching, she reported. Victoria's screaming about injustice, but no one's sympathetic. Everyone remembers how she treated you. The house, my house, would be assessed. Patricia suggested selling it, splitting proceeds with Marcus to resolve the structural improvements issue fairly. Seemed right. Neither of us wanted to live there anymore. Too many ghosts, too much pain. The building itself would be someone else's fresh start. I drove past once, weeks after Victoria left. Someone had already started removing her elaborate renovations, returning rooms to simpler designs. The yard was overgrown, roses tangled, but still alive. Eleanor's garden refused to die, just like her memory. I didn't feel victorious watching this, just tired. Justice wasn't the triumph I'd imagined. It was simply the restoration of balance, of truth acknowledged and wrongs addressed. Nothing more, but also nothing less. Marcus moved in with me officially in May. The apartment felt less empty with him there, though we were still learning how to be father and son again, rather than adversaries. We shared meals, conversations, and silences. One evening, sitting at my small kitchen table with takeout Chinese food between us, Marcus said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about respect being earned, not given." I nodded, waiting. I took you for granted. Took everything you'd built and sacrificed for granted. I thought because we were family, I could treat you however I wanted and you'd always be there. He paused. I was wrong. I looked at my son. Graying now, lines around his eyes, carrying the weight of hard lessons learned. We both made mistakes, I said carefully. I could have fought harder, communicated better. But yes, you chose wrong when it mattered most. We ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Marcus asked about my plans. I'd been offered a foreman position on Bernard's latest project, and the house sale would provide security. Maybe travel, something Eleanor and I had always postponed. What about you? I asked. Marcus smiled slightly. Therapy. A lot of therapy. Rebuilding my career. Maybe eventually, if you're willing, rebuilding our relationship properly this time. Outside, the city lights flickered. Eleanor's photograph watched us from the end table, her smile eternal. I thought about everything we'd survived. Loss, betrayal, humiliation, and finally, tentative redemption. Respect isn't given by blood or marriage, I said, echoing thoughts I'd carried for months. It's earned through choices, through standing up when it matters, through honoring what's right over what's easy. Marcus raised his beer bottle in acknowledgement. We clinked glass gently, a small ceremony marking new beginnings. The future was uncertain, fragile as spring ice, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful. I'd reclaimed my dignity, my property, and the possibility of having my son back. Not the one who'd betrayed me, but the one who'd finally learned what true respect meant. Eleanor would have been proud.